April 15th, 1931. The salt-laced air of Coney Island hangs heavy and damp over the Nuova Villa Tamaro restaurant. Inside, the scent of garlic, red wine, and cheap cigar smoke does little to cut through the oppressive tension. You can almost taste the fear on your tongue, a metallic tang that settles beneath the rich notes of the Neapolitan feast spread across the white linen tablecloth. Seated at the head of the table is Giuseppe Joe the Boss Masseria, a man whose girth is matched only by his reputation for brutish, old-world violence. His heavy-lidded eyes, accustomed to seeing threats in every shadow, seem sluggish today, softened by the midday meal and the Chianti flowing freely into his glass. Across from him sits Charles Luciano, known to his friends as Lucky. He is younger, leaner, a stark contrast to the old guard. His tailored suit is immaculate, his face a mask of calm deference. But beneath the surface, his mind is a whirlwind of calculations, a complex machine processing risk and reward. To his left and right are his trusted associates, the men who form the core of his ambition. Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, restless and simmering with a volatile energy that makes him constantly shift in his chair, and Vito Genovese, whose quiet intensity is somehow more menacing than Siegel's overt aggression. They eat, they drink, they make small talk about the Castellamarese War, the bloody conflict that has turned the streets of New York into a graveyard for more than 60 men. Masseria gestures with a chicken bone, his voice a low rumble. He complains about Salvatore Maranzano, the rival boss from Castellammare del Golfo, Sicily, whose forces have been chipping away at Masseria's empire for 2 long years. He is a snake, this Maranzano, Masseria grunts, wiping grease from his thick mustache with the back of his hand. He thinks his old ways are better. We will show him. We will crush him. Luciano nods, his expression unreadable. He has heard this speech 1,000 times. He has also seen the writing on the wall. Masseria is a relic, a mustache Pete, who refuses to adapt. He distrusts anyone not from his own Sicilian village. He scoffs at Luciano's profitable partnerships with non-Italians like the Jewish gangsters Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel. To Masseria, the future of crime looks like the past. To Luciano, the past is a corpse that needs to be buried. The war is bad for business. It draws unwanted attention from the police and the federal government. It bleeds profits. It has to end. And the only way for it to end is for Joe the Boss to disappear. I have to use the washroom, Luciano says, his voice even. He dabs his lips with a napkin, folds it neatly, and places it on the table. He pushes his chair back, the sound of its legs scraping against the tile floor unnaturally loud in the quiet restaurant. Masseria, preoccupied with another forkful of spaghetti, merely waves a dismissive hand. Siegel and Genovese exchange a glance so fleeting it is almost invisible. Luciano walks past the bar, through a beaded curtain and into the narrow hallway leading to the back. He does not stop at the restroom. He keeps walking, past the kitchen, and out the rear exit, the spring air a sudden cold shock against his skin. He does not look back. He knows what is about to happen because he planned it, piece by bloody piece, with the meticulous care of an architect designing a skyscraper. Seconds stretch into an eternity. Back in the dining room, Masseria is playing a hand of cards, his attention focused on the ace of spades he holds. The front door of the Nuova Villa Tamaro swings open. 4 men enter. They are not here for lunch. Their faces are hard, their movements economical and precise. One of them is Albert Anastasia, another, Joe Adonis. Their hands are deep inside their long coats. Masseria looks up from his cards, a flicker of confusion crossing his face before it contorts into a mask of pure terror. He is a bull, but he is a bull trapped in a slaughterhouse. He tries to rise, his heavy frame overturning the table. Wine glasses shatter, plates crash to the floor. But it is too late. The room explodes in a deafening roar of gunfire. 2 .38 caliber revolvers and a .32 bark in unison. Slugs tear through the air, ripping into Masseria's body. He is thrown backward against the wall, a grotesque puppet whose strings have been cut. He slides to the floor, leaving a thick, crimson smear on the wallpaper. The ace of spades, clutched in his dying hand, flutters to the ground and lands in a pooling slick of his own blood. The gunmen do not linger. They turn and walk out as quickly as they came, their work complete. The war, for all intents and purposes, is over. Outside, down the street, Charles Lucky Luciano waits in a car, Meyer Lansky at his side. He does not need to see the body. He knows the foundation for his new world has just been laid in blood and betrayal. The aftermath is almost as quiet as the setup. By the time the New York City Police Department arrives at the Nuova Villa Tamaro, the gunmen are long gone, melted back into the city's anonymous sprawl. Detectives find a scene of carnage frozen in time, an overturned table, shattered plates, and the body of Giuseppe Masseria, riddled with at least 5 bullets, slumped in a corner. The ace of spades lies beside his outstretched hand, a final, grim piece of symbolism. When they bring Charles Luciano in for questioning, he is the picture of concerned innocence. He tells the police he went to the restroom, and upon hearing the gunfire, fled in terror out the back, as any sensible man would. His alibi is unshakable. There are witnesses who saw him leave the dining room minutes before the eruption of violence. They have nothing to hold him on. Within hours, he is back on the street, the faint smell of police station coffee and stale cigarette smoke clinging to his suit. With Masseria gone, the Castellamarese War is officially over. A new king ascends the throne, and his name is Salvatore Maranzano. He is a man intoxicated by history and power, viewing himself not as a mere gangster but as a modern-day Julius Caesar. He summons hundreds of mobsters from across the city to a grand meeting in a large banquet hall in the Bronx. The air is thick with anticipation and the nervous energy of men who have spent 2 years trying to kill one another. They stand along the walls, a sea of dark suits and wary faces watching the stage. Maranzano emerges, flanked by his bodyguards. He is dapper, almost professorial, with a neatly trimmed mustache and an imperious air. He carries a leather-bound book. He speaks not in the guttural slang of the street, but in a more formal, educated Italian, weaving tales of the Roman Empire into his vision for the future of organized crime in America. He declares victory, but he also declares a new order. He is not just a boss. He is the capo di tutti I capi, the boss of all bosses. He announces his grand design. The Italian-American underworld of New York will be organized into 5 distinct families, each with its own territory and hierarchy, a structure designed to prevent the kind of chaotic, bloody wars that had just concluded. He names the heads of these new families: Joseph Bonanno, Joe Profaci, Tommy Galliano, Vincent Mangano. And then, with a magnanimous gesture that is equal parts strategy and threat, he names the 5th boss, Charles Luciano. The room murmurs. Luciano, Masseria's top lieutenant, the man who betrayed his boss to end the war, is being rewarded. Maranzano is consolidating power, absorbing the strength of his former enemy into his new empire. Luciano steps forward and publicly pledges his loyalty, his face an unreadable cipher. But Caesar's reign comes with strict rules. Maranzano imposes a tax on the other families, a tribute paid directly to him. More importantly, he reestablishes the old world doctrine that Luciano despised. Business is to be kept strictly among Italians. All partnerships with outsiders, especially the Jewish gangsters like Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel, who were the architects of Luciano's most profitable ventures, are forbidden. For Luciano, this is not peace. It is a new kind of prison. He did not orchestrate the murder of one Mustache Pete, only to bend the knee to another, one who cloaked his greed in Roman mythology. The celebration of Maranzano's victory is short-lived. His arrogance grows with his power. He begins to see threats everywhere, compiling a hit list of those he deems disloyal. High on that list are the names Vito Genovese and, of course, Charles Luciano. Word of this list travels quickly through the underworld's invisible channels. Luciano sits in the back of a smoky club with Meyer Lansky, the numbers genius who sees the world not in terms of loyalty or tradition, but in pure, cold profit and loss. Lansky speaks quietly, his logic irrefutable. "This guy is no different from the last one," he says, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "He's got a bigger crown, that's all. A bigger crown makes for a bigger target." Luciano stares into the smoke, a slow fire kindling in his eyes. He nods. Maranzano's empire, built on the foundations of a bloody war, has a fatal crack running through its center, and it has only been 5 months. September 10th, 1931. The midday sun glints off the limestone facade of the New York Central Building at 230 Park Avenue. Inside, Salvatore Maranzano sits in his 9th-floor office, a sprawling suite of rooms that serves as the headquarters for his legitimate business, the Eagle Building Corporation. The name is a fiction, a thin veneer of legitimacy over a criminal enterprise. Maranzano, the self-styled Caesar, has traded the back rooms of social clubs for the trappings of corporate power. He believes the polished marble floors and uniformed elevator operators provide a different kind of armor, one that protects him from the brutish violence of the streets he so recently commanded. He is wrong. His greatest vulnerability is not the strength of his enemies, but his own hubris. While Maranzano dictates letters to his secretary, another plan, conceived in the shadows by Charles Luciano and Meyer Lansky, is reaching its final bloody act. The strategy is built on a foundation of pure logic. Maranzano's guards are trained to look for Italian assassins, for familiar faces from rival crews. They would never suspect a team of Jewish killers, men completely unknown to the insular world of the Sicilian Mafia, and they certainly would not suspect men who looked like the law. 4 men walk through the grand lobby of the New York Central Building. They are dressed in smart suits and fedoras, their faces set with a grim determination that could easily be mistaken for civic duty. One of them, Samuel Red Levine, is an observant Jew who has just come from Rosh Hashanah services. His partners in this endeavor are equally formidable. Bo Weinberg and Abraham Bug Workman, killers hand-picked by Lansky for their efficiency and nerve. They carry briefcases. Inside, beneath neatly folded papers, lie donked .38 caliber revolvers and long, sharp knives. They flash fraudulent Treasury Department credentials at the front desk and are waved through without a second glance. The elevator ride to the 9th floor is silent and tense. They step out into a quiet carpeted hallway and proceed directly to the offices of the Eagle Building Corporation. A receptionist looks up, startled. They do not wait for permission. They brush past her and enter Maranzano's private office. Inside, the boss of all bosses is meeting with several of his men, including Tommy Lucchese. Maranzano looks up, annoyed by the interruption. "We are Treasury agents," one of the assassins announces, his voice flat and official. "We need to speak with Mr. Maranzano, alone." Maranzano's bodyguards tense, their hands instinctively moving toward their jackets, but the sight of what appear to be federal agents freezes them. To resist the government is to bring a different, more powerful enemy into their world. This is the genius of Luciano's plan. It uses the very system Maranzano fears to paralyze his defenses. "Everyone, line up against the wall," Levine commands. He and his partners efficiently disarm Maranzano's men, taking their pistols with practiced ease. Maranzano, still believing this is a legitimate raid, begins to bluster about his lawyers. The assassins look at Tommy Lucchese, who gives a subtle, almost imperceptible nod toward his boss. It is the signal, the confirmation. In a split second, the charade is over. 2 of the assassins draw their knives. The polished steel flashes in the office light. They lunge at Maranzano, who is still standing behind his large mahogany desk. He lets out a choked gasp of disbelief as the first blade sinks into his chest. He stumbles backward, his hands coming up not to fight, but in a futile gesture of shock. They stab him again and again, a flurry of vicious, silent blows. They are professionals. There's no wasted motion. As Maranzano collapses, his lifeblood staining the expensive Persian rug, one of the men pulls his revolver and fires a single shot into his head. The sound is shockingly loud in the enclosed space, a final, percussive end to the reign of the boss of all bosses. The 4 men turn and walk calmly out of the office, leaving a scene of stunned horror behind them. In the hallway, they pass a hulking figure on his way to see Maranzano, the notorious contract killer Vincent Mad Dog Call. Seeing 4 men rushing out, one of whom he recognizes as a known gunman, Call assumes it is a police raid. He turns and flees the building without a second thought, inadvertently adding to the chaos and confusion that will muddy the subsequent police investigation. Luciano's assassins disappear back into the city, their mission accomplished. Within a single day, some 40 more of Maranzano's loyalists across the country are systematically eliminated. It is not just a murder. It is a purge. The old world, with its single dictatorial ruler, is dead and buried. The stage is now clear for the architect to reveal his true masterpiece. November 1931. The wind sweeping off Lake Michigan is sharp and cold, rattling the windows of a lavish suite high up in Chicago's Ambassador Hotel. Inside, the air is thick with the smoke of expensive cigars and the palpable weight of history being made. The men gathered here represent the most formidable criminal power in the United States. They are the survivors, the victors, the ones who did not end up like Mafia or Maranzano. At the center of the room, holding court not with the bluster of a king, but with the quiet confidence of a corporate executive, is Charles Luciano. He has summoned them here, to the neutral ground of Chicago, under the watchful eye of Alphonse Al Capone's organization, the Chicago Outfit. Capone himself is present, his large frame filling an armchair, though his swagger is diminished. The federal government, led by prosecutor George E.Q. Johnson, is closing in on him for tax evasion, a threat more potent than any rival's bullet. He listens intently, a man beginning to understand that the rules of the game are changing. The heads of New York's 5 families are here: the young, ambitious Joseph Bonanno, the stoic Tommy Galliano, the shrewd Vincent Mangano, the reserved Joe Profaci. And of course, Meyer Lansky is here, standing quietly by the window, his presence a silent testament to the new philosophy Luciano is about to unveil. "We have just been through a war," Luciano begins, his voice calm, reasonable. He does not shout. He does not pound the table. He speaks to them as equals, as businessmen. "We buried more than 60 of our own. For what? So one man could put a crown on his head and call himself the boss of all bosses? We saw how that ended for Joe Mafia. Then we saw how it ended for Sal Maranzano 5 months later." He lets the words hang in the air. Every man in the room understands the brutal, simple truth. The old way is a death sentence. "That model is finished," Luciano continues, pacing slowly before the fireplace. "It is bad for business. It is a spectacle. It draws the attention of the police, of the treasury men, of the newspapers. A king has to worry about every man beneath him who wants his throne. There is no stability. There is no real profit." He stops and looks around the room, making eye contact with each man. "I am proposing something different, something modern, something American. We are not in Sicily anymore. This is not the Roman Empire. This is a business, and it is time we started running it like one." He lays out his vision. There will be no boss of all bosses. Instead, there will be a board of directors. He calls it the Commission. This body, comprised of the heads of the most powerful families, will govern their shared interests. It will mediate disputes between families, preventing them from escalating into costly wars. It will approve all major new ventures and sanction all high-level executions. Decisions will be made by a majority vote. It is a democracy of crime, a corporate solution to a feudal problem. He then tackles the most radical idea of all. "Our businesses," he says, his voice firm, "are about one thing: making money. The color of a man's skin, or the god he prays to, does not change the color of his money. Our friend Meyer here," he gestures to Lansky, "can make more money with a telephone and a ledger than a dozen greaseballs with machine guns. We will work with anyone who is reliable and can turn a profit. The Jews, the Irish, anyone. We will organize. We will cooperate. We will form a national syndicate." A murmur runs through the room. This is heresy to the old-timers, who were raised on the doctrine of Sicilian exclusivity. But the younger men like Bonanno, see the undeniable logic. The profits from Lansky and Siegel's gambling operations, from Dutch Schultz's numbers rackets, are too vast to ignore. Luciano is not asking them to abandon their traditions, but to place business above them. The final piece of his structure is enforcement. The Commission's rulings will be absolute. To enforce its will, a dedicated unit of contract killers will be established, a group of assassins drawn from various factions, loyal only to the Commission itself. They will be the syndicate's Supreme Court and its executioners. The newspapers would later give them a name: Murder Incorporated. The discussion lasts for hours, but the outcome is inevitable. The men in the room have seen the cost of the old ways written in blood on the streets of New York. Luciano's proposal offers a future of unprecedented stability and wealth. By the time the meeting adjourns, the agreement is unanimous. The National Crime Syndicate is born, with a commission as its ruling council. Charles Lucky, Luciano, is not its king. He is its chairman. He has not conquered the underworld. He has organized it. He is finally the architect. 1933. The clinking of glasses and the roar of a celebrating crowd echo through the streets of New York City. Prohibition, the 13-year-long noble experiment, is dead. Franklin Delano Roosevelt has signed the 21st Amendment, and legal alcohol flows once more. For many bootleggers, this is the end of an era, the drying up of a river of illicit gold. For Charles Luciano and the newly formed commission, it is merely a strategic pivot. They have spent years building a vast infrastructure of breweries, distilleries, trucking networks, and distribution points. Now, they simply adapt, moving from illegal production to the control of legal distribution, muscling their way into liquor unions and trucking associations, ensuring that their product, now taxed and legal, still fills their pockets. But Luciano's vision extends far beyond a single commodity. With the commission providing a stable, national framework, he and his associates begin to systematize and expand every conceivable racket. The city of New York becomes their laboratory. From his headquarters, a lavish suite in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel where he lives under the unassuming alias of Charles Ross, Luciano presides over an empire of staggering scope and complexity. He is a phantom, his name rarely appearing on any official document, yet his influence is everywhere. His right-hand man, Vito Genovese, oversees the Italian lottery in Manhattan, a numbers game that preys on the hopes of the city's poor, pulling in thousands of dollars a day in untraceable cash. Down on the waterfront, Vincent Mangano's family, with the help of enforcers like Albert Anastasia, seizes control of the longshoremen's unions. Every crate that moves across the docks, from silk stockings to industrial machinery, pays a hidden tax to the syndicate. To refuse is to risk a cargo hook in the ribs or a long walk off a short pier. Meanwhile, Meyer Lansky, the financial genius, is expanding their gambling operations far beyond the back-alley craps games of their youth. He establishes elegant high-stakes casinos just outside the city limits, in places like Saratoga Springs and further afield in Florida and New Orleans, all operating with the complicity of bribed politicians and police chiefs. Bugsy Siegel, Lansky's volatile but charismatic partner, handles the enforcement and expansion on the West Coast, dreaming of a gambling oasis in the Nevada desert. Luciano's most personal and profitable enterprise, however, is the one that will ultimately become his downfall: prostitution. Under the brutal and meticulous management of his lieutenant, David Little Davy Batillo, the syndicate revolutionizes the oldest profession. They do not just control a few brothels, they organize the entire industry on a corporate scale. They create a bonding system for madams and pimps. Any house wishing to operate in the city must pay a weekly fee, a franchise tax, to Luciano's organization. In return, they receive protection from rival gangs, from petty criminals, and most importantly, from the police. The system is brutally efficient. Brothels are graded and priced, from the high-end call girl services operating out of fancy apartment buildings to the cheap dollar houses in the Bowery. Prostitutes are treated as chattel, moved from one house to another to prevent them from forming attachments or becoming too familiar to the local police beat. If a woman steps out of line, or if a madam holds back on the weekly payment, enforcers like Tommy the Bull Pinocchio are dispatched to administer beatings or razor blade punishments as a stark reminder of who is in charge. The operation generates an estimated $12 million a year, a torrent of cash flowing directly into Luciano's coffers, making him one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the country. He lives the part, dressing in custom-tailored suits, frequenting the city's most exclusive nightclubs, and being seen with a string of beautiful showgirls. To the public, he's a wealthy gambler, a mysterious man of means. To the underworld, he is the undisputed chairman of the board. But this high-profile success is breeding a new kind of enemy. In the courthouses downtown, a man is making a name for himself by targeting the city's most untouchable criminals. His name is Thomas E. Dewey, a relentless and ambitious special prosecutor. He does not see a sophisticated businessman. He sees a parasite feasting on the city, and he is about to turn all his attention and the full power of the state on the man they call Lucky. 1935. High up in the Woolworth building, in a suite of offices buzzing with an almost fanatical energy, Thomas Edmund Dewey is building a war machine. He is a man of immaculate suits and a neatly clipped mustache, but beneath the polished exterior is a prosecutor of relentless, almost puritanical zeal. Appointed as a special prosecutor by the governor, his mandate is simple: break the grip of organized crime on New York City. The public is clamoring for a hero, and Dewey, keenly aware of the political stepping stone this role represents, is determined to give them one. His initial forays are frustrating. He targets the infamous Arthur Dutch Schultz Flegenheimer, a notoriously violent and unpredictable beer baron. But Schultz is a slippery target, adept at intimidating witnesses and manipulating the legal system. Twice, Dewey brings him to trial, and twice, Schultz walks free. The press begins to mock Dewey as ineffective, another crusader destined to be broken against the city's wall of corruption. Dewey needs a victory. He needs a target so significant that a conviction would be undeniable, a symbol of the very syndicate he aims to destroy. His gaze settles on the man at the top of the pyramid, the untouchable chairman living a life of luxury at the Waldorf Astoria, Charles Lucky Luciano. The problem is Luciano's insulation. He is an architect, not a bricklayer. His hands are clean. He does not collect the money. He does not break the legs. He does not hold the gun. To get to him, Dewey needs to climb a ladder of testimony, starting from the very bottom rung. His investigators, working tirelessly, identify Luciano's most sprawling and vulnerable enterprise, the prostitution racket. It is a business built on the exploitation of thousands of women, a vast pool of potential witnesses. It is also a crime that will inflame public opinion, casting Dewey as a white knight saving damsels from a dragon's den. The strategy is audacious and requires absolute secrecy. For months, Dewey's team builds its case in the shadows, mapping the entire network of brothels, bookers, and enforcers. They compile lists of names and addresses. Then, on the freezing night of February 1st, 1936, Dewey unleashes his storm. Over 200 police officers, working under the direct command of Dewey's office, simultaneously raid more than 80 brothels across Manhattan and Brooklyn. The operation is a masterpiece of coordination. Doors are splintered with axes and sledgehammers. In lavish apartments and squalid tenements, madams and their bookers are dragged from their beds. Hundreds of prostitutes, caught in various states of undress, are rounded up amid a cacophony of shrieks and shattering glass. The net is cast wide, scooping up everyone from the lowest streetwalker to Luciano's top lieutenants in the operation, including David Batillo and Tommy Panaccio. The true battle, however, begins not in the streets, but in the interrogation rooms. The arrested women are not charged with crimes. They are held as material witnesses, confined in hotels and detention centers, isolated from their pimps and the mob's lawyers. At first, they are met with a wall of terrified silence. These women have lived under the syndicate's brutal code for years. They know the price of talking is a beating at best, a razor-slashed face, or a concrete-filled barrel at worst. But Dewey's prosecutors are relentless. They offer the women a choice: testify and receive protection and a new start, or refuse and face up to 20 years in prison on compulsory prostitution charges. They work on them day and night, slowly chipping away at their fear. One by one, the stories begin to spill out. A woman named Cokie Flo Brown, a longtime madam and heroin addict, starts talking about the system, about the mandatory bonding fees paid to the syndicate. Another, Nancy Presser, details how she was beaten for holding back just a few dollars. The testimony is a horrifying litany of exploitation, a portrait of a business run with the cold efficiency of a meatpacking plant. They name their tormentors, the mid-level managers who collected the money and enforced the rules. Finally, Dewey gets what he needs. Under immense pressure, several witnesses identify the man at the very top, the ultimate beneficiary of their misery, the man they knew only as the boss, the man who got the biggest cut of all, Charles Luciano. The trap is sprung. April 3rd, 1936. The humid, sulfur-scented air of Hot Springs, Arkansas, feels a world away from the grit of New York City. Charles Luciano is taking the waters, a regular routine in this unofficial open city where mobsters from across the country can relax under the protection of a corrupt local government. He is at a massage parlor, lying on a table, supremely confident that Thomas Dewey's crusade is nothing more than a nuisance. He believes the charges are preposterous. A man of his stature, the chairman of the board, would never dirty his hands with something as low as running streetwalkers. He is untouchable. He is wrong. The doors burst open, and the room is suddenly filled with local detectives and two of Dewey's own investigators. They are not here to negotiate. They have a warrant for his arrest and extradition papers signed by the governor. Luciano's calm evaporates, replaced by a cold fury. For weeks, his lawyers fight a desperate legal battle, but Dewey's political pressure is immense. The architect of the modern American Mafia is brought back to New York in handcuffs, a spectacle for the ravenous press who have already branded him public enemy number one. The trial begins on May 11th, 1936 in the New York Supreme Court building. The courtroom is a tinderbox of media, society onlookers, and nervous legal aides. At the center of it all are two men. Thomas Dewey, precise and relentless, orchestrates his prosecution with the skill of a master conductor. And Charles Luciano, seated beside his high-priced defense attorney, George Morton Levy, appears cool and detached in his perfectly tailored $1,000 suits, looking more like a Wall Street tycoon than a man on trial for 90 counts of compulsory prostitution. The judge, Philip J. McCook, is a stern, no-nonsense figure who makes it clear he will not tolerate any courtroom theatrics. Dewey's entire case rests on a parade of witnesses the likes of which have never been seen in a trial of this magnitude. One by one, the prostitutes and madams, Cokie Flo Brown, Nancy Presser, Mildred Harris, take the stand. They are scared. Some are visibly going through withdrawal, but their stories are devastatingly consistent. They speak of a citywide system of control, of weekly payments to men named Jimmy Fredericks and Tommy the Bull, of violent reprisals for holding out even a few dollars. They describe a pyramid of power, and at the very top of that pyramid, they place the defendant, Charles Luciano. George Morton Levy's defense strategy is brutal and direct: attack the witnesses. On cross-examination, he tears into their pasts, listing their criminal records, their drug habits, their lies. He paints them as vengeful, unreliable criminals who have been coached and bribed by Dewey's office with promises of immunity and cash. "You would say anything to save your own skin, wouldn't you?" he thunders at one woman who breaks down in tears on the stand. For a time, it seems to be working. How could a jury of 12 ordinary citizens convict a man based on the testimony of what society considered its lowest dregs? Then, Luciano makes the single greatest mistake of his criminal career. Against the vehement advice of his lawyers, he insists on taking the stand in his own defense. His vanity and arrogance are his undoing. He believes he can outwit Dewey, that he can charm the jury with his sophisticated demeanor and deny any connection to such a sordid business. He steps into the witness box, a picture of confidence. He calmly denies everything. He has never seen these women. He barely knows the men they have named. But Dewey does not attack him head-on about prostitution. Instead, he begins a surgical dissection of Luciano's life. "Mr. Ross," Dewey begins, using Luciano's alias, "you live in a suite at the Waldorf Astoria, is that correct?" "Yes." "And you wear custom-made suits?" "Yes." "And you own racehorses?" "Yes." "Could you please tell the jury what you do for a living?" "I am a bookmaker, a gambler," Luciano answers smoothly. For hours, Dewey leads him through his finances. How much did he win last year? Luciano cannot remember specific figures. Who did he place these winning bets with? He is vague. How can he afford a life of such luxury on the inconsistent income of a gambler? Luciano's answers become evasive, then contradictory. The mask of the sophisticated businessman begins to slip, revealing the thuggish arrogance beneath. Dewey traps him in a web of his own lies, forcing him to admit associations with known racketeers. By the time the cross-examination is over, Luciano has not been proven to be a pimp, but he has been proven, beyond any doubt, to be a liar. He has given the jury a reason to believe the women on the stand over the man in the tailored suit. On June 6, 1936, after the closing arguments have faded, the 12 jurors file out to begin their deliberations. The air in the courtroom is thick with an almost unbearable tension. Charles Luciano sits at the defense table, his hands clasped, the faint glimmer of sweat on his brow the only crack in his carefully constructed composure. His entire empire, everything he has built, now rests in the hands of 12 strangers. The jury is out for less than 6 hours. When they file back into the courtroom, their faces are grim and set. Charles Luciano rises to his feet, his posture rigid. The foreman hands a slip of paper to the clerk. The rustling of the paper is the only sound in the silent room. The clerk clears his throat and reads the verdict. On 62 separate counts of compulsory prostitution, the jury finds the defendant, Charles Luciano, guilty. A gasp ripples through the gallery. Luciano's face, for the first time, registers a flicker of genuine shock, a flash of disbelief that quickly hardens into a mask of cold fury. Judge McCook sentences him to 30 to 50 years in state prison, one of the longest sentences ever handed down for such a crime. The architect of the modern American Mafia is led from the courtroom in handcuffs, his reign as the undisputed king of New York crime brought to an ignominious end. He is sent to Dannemora Prison, a fortress of gray stone deep in the Adirondack Mountains, so close to the Canadian border that it is known as Siberia. The contrast with his life at the Waldorf Astoria could not be more stark. He trades his $1,000 suits for a coarse prison uniform, his fine dining for mess hall slop. But even behind bars, Luciano is not just another inmate. From his cell, through a network of couriers and corrupt guards, he continues to exert influence. He is no longer the chairman, that role having been assumed by his acting boss, Vito Genovese, but he remains a senior advisor. The commission he created continues to function, a testament to the strength of his design. Years pass. The world outside changes. On December 7th, 1941, the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor and the United States is plunged into the Second World War. The war effort creates a new and urgent set of priorities for the American government, and in a twist of fate, it is this global conflict that provides Luciano with his final, improbable key to freedom. The docks of New York City, which the mob has controlled for decades, are now a critical artery for the war, lifeline for shipping men and material to Europe. But the docks are also a hotbed of espionage and sabotage. German U-boats are sinking Allied ships with uncanny accuracy, suggesting spies are feeding them information about convoy schedules. In February 1942, the French luxury liner SS Normandy, being refitted as a troopship, mysteriously catches fire and capsizes at its pier, a disaster widely suspected to be the work of Axis saboteurs. U.S. naval intelligence is desperate. They need eyes and ears on the waterfront, a place where their own agents are met with a wall of silence and hostility. They need to talk to someone who controls the longshoremen, the stevedores, and the unions. They need to talk to the Mafia. Through a series of intermediaries, a secret and highly unorthodox deal is struck. The operation is codenamed Project Underworld. Naval intelligence officers begin meeting with Meyer Lansky and Joseph Socks Lanza, the mob boss who controls the Fulton Fish Market and its associated docks. They offer a simple quid pro quo, cooperate with the government, and the government might look favorably on certain legal situations. Lansky and Lanza agree, but they make it clear that to get the absolute ironclad loyalty of every man on the waterfront, the order has to come from the top. It has to come from the man still respected by all, the man rotting away in Dannemora. It has to come from Charles Luciano. Luciano is transferred to a more comfortable prison closer to the city. In a secret meeting, he agrees to help. The word goes out from his cell. Cooperate with the Navy. The wall of silence on the docks crumbles overnight. Longshoremen suddenly become the Navy's eyes and ears, reporting suspicious activity and identifying potential saboteurs. Strikes and smuggling cease. The flow of information to German U-boats is choked off. Luciano, the convicted pimp and racketeer, becomes a key, albeit secret asset in the American war effort.